Welcome in, DNVR Fantasy. Whole crew here. Super producer Kale, as always, a shining light for us in the fantasy rankings this season. And my man Justin Michael, who has a new coach. Look at that beautiful Rams light behind Kale, by the way. Justin, has this invigorated you and given you more joy in football across the board? Or are you a true pro and it doesn't really seep into the rest of your life?
No, I'm ecstatic, man. I mean, Nevada's been my favorite team to watch the last couple of years.
Yeah,
and now CSU has all of the reasons that I've been, stoked to watch them outside of Carson Strong. So it's really exciting time to be a CSU fan. I'm stoked to do more content, but I'm stoked to be back on the fantasy pod. I was bummed to miss last week, but kind of a surprising day with Adazio getting fired.
Yeah, we certainly understood. That was a fun one. And it's not just exciting to be a Rams fan right now. It's exciting to be a Broncos fan as well, because a star was truly born Sunday night against the Chiefs. Javonte Williams going off as the full-time starter without Melvin Gordon, really showing what he can do in all facets of the game. And just basically clarifying that he will run through tackles in the NFL the same way that he did in the ACC. And honestly, it gave me a smile all game as I watched him run, Kale, thinking about some of the conversations you and I have had on this pod about the rise of the run game that was never more clear. Forget in the Broncos game, but then in the Monday Nighter, where the Patriots won convincingly, if not for a muff punt. They absolutely wiped the floor with the Bills by running the entire game. Kale, the Bills are in nickel for still like most of the first quarter. How did they not get the memo, and how emblematic of where we are in the modern NFL and how that pendulum has now swung so far to where guys like Javonte, Ramondre, and all our favorite power backs are just eating?
As we said last week, the power back is back. And it's really just a symptom of how the Bills are built on defense. They didn't have the personnel to go any other option because their best players are all built to play in nickel. And they thought that was their best chance. It's as simple as that.
You're absolutely right. And the Broncos in a division where Mike Mayock is addicted to drafting safeties and the Raiders have nothing but light formations. Chiefs, everyone thought, oh, it's so cute and modern that they only have 2 starting linebackers in their depth chart to start the season. Well, they've had to adjust in a major way because that's caught up to them. The Chargers, everyone thought the Chargers were geniuses 3 years ago for the 3 safeties to stop Lamar. Now it's time to pay the piper. It's time to tackle Javonte Williams at the second level, week in, week out. Welcome to the fight, my friends, because I want to ask you, Justin, when's the last time we had a Broncos fantasy star at this level? Because I want to get into where Javonte would rank, where you'd want to prioritize him in keeper, dynasty leagues, because the sky's kind of the limit, and it's been at least a half decade since.
Yeah, I mean, I think you probably have to go back to peak Demaryius Thomas, end of the Peyton Manning era. There's just been nothing to be that excited about from a fantasy perspective with this offense for a while now. Cortland Sutton's got some hype, but he hasn't been, in the conversation for being, an elite fantasy receiver or anything like that yet. So definitely in rare breed, and kind of like Marshawn Lynch said, MFers don't like it when you run through their face over and over and over again. And that's what Javonte Williams does. He made a pretty miserable Broncos game actually, watchable and kind of, I was okay after it because he was so impressive in that. I just kept thinking about the future.
I mean, incredible. I think I went to look back, Kale. You're looking at about 2015, where CJ Anderson was getting some top 10 hype, Demaryius Thomas. in that range. They didn't really live up to it the way the offense. I thought we might have to go back to like Peyton in the record-breaking season. I was thinking of Monte Ball was getting some top 10 hype. But like, yikesies.
It has been a while. Broncos offensive skill positions have actually been one of my go-to rules has been avoid drafting them in recent years. So this is kind of a crazy, crazy switch of mentalities for me. Javonte, his stocks couldn't be higher. Like you said, the sky's the limit. Terrell Davis himself tweeted out during the game the other day, he's a throwback. He really is. But what's cool about Javonte is they're also throwing him the ball, and he looks like he's got some decent hands, even if they're not elite like Christian McCaffrey's might be. I mean, in whether you're in standard or PPR leagues, I just don't know what more nice things can be said about his future moving forward, especially going into next year, assuming he's not going to be in a split backfield anymore.
Yeah, and honestly, I mean, that's a situation to monitor. That's a major factor in all these things. Low key, did Mike Boone look good enough? Now it's one game to where you're happy enough with him as your second back and you don't murk it up too much. I do think his hands, though, kind of underrated. This is some scouts like talk that up. He shows the ability to catch the ball twice, stay concentrated on that, and then still, that acceleration and ability to beat guys in space really stands out. Just to put this all in frame, when CJ Anderson and Demaryius Thomas were getting top 10 buzz in fantasy to start a season, 15, the top back was Le'Veon Bell with Adrian Peterson, Eddie Lacy, Jamal Charles, and Marshawn Lynch topping out the top 5. So, yeah.
Jamal Charles was still top 5 back then?
The fact that Adrian Peterson was still top 5 back then is surprising.
It really shows you how much has changed in a half decade. Just like us thinking, those guys were 6+ years into their career. How often would we draft a running back with that much tread on the tires in the top 5 nowadays? Never, right?
Yeah.
Henry, that's about it. But even that's probably a question now after this year.
Exactly. And so I think this is where it starts. Dynasty rankings, the most up-to-date I could find was from a couple weeks ago, and you were already seeing Javonte Williams as RB11 and prospect 22 overall. Now let's go through those running backs that were ahead of him.
Okay.
And update this list to see who is Javonte definitively above how many guys? Where does the buck stop? So we'll work our way down. Surprisingly, RB10 is Derrick Henry. Now, the injuries are what they are, and obviously it is a dynasty ranking, so he's older than a lot of these backs.
Good point.
Javonte Williams in a dynasty ahead of Derrick Henry, and then we can dish it out on redrafts if you want to. I see Kale nodding his head yes, definitely.
Yeah, for sure. Of course. I mean, not in a bad way, but if you have Derrick Henry in a dynasty, even if he comes back fully healthy, you've got probably 2 more years. Javonte's looking like you got 5 of top 10 scoring potential. It's just numbers at that point.
Exactly. Different trajectories, kind of easy. Redraft is where it gets more interesting because of the offenses and everything. But backs coming off an injury, we've talked about how Derrick Henry's sustainability as a top back. I mean, this isn't literally an episode we did earlier in the season. Historic, unprecedented. It would be even more unprecedented for him to come back from an injury and keep that up. Now, he's a freak, far be it for me. So, Justin, gun to your head right now. Derrick Henry, December 8th, 2021, ahead of a redraft or behind Javonte Williams?
I think it would still have to be ahead going into next year just because
Derrick Henry.
I have faith that Henry's going to come back and at least, be solid. But it's at least a debate at this point, and that's saying something because,
yes,
Henry for the last 2 years has just been on an unprecedented tear, basically, from at least from a non PPR perspective. Like, you could draft this dude and he'd still be putting up 25 points a week. It's crazy. But with what we're seeing from Javonte, and like we said, it seems like he's going to be that bell cow moving forward. It's at least a debate. Like, I struggle with it even now. I find myself talking myself into, well, Javonte by the end of the season next year, probably putting up big numbers.
Yes, and obviously the next few weeks will really determine this. Like, if Javonte has another couple games like that, it'll be definitively Javonte probably. If instead he cools off and has more mediocre games, and it's all in the context of the Broncos offense, it's probably Derrick Henry ahead for most. And again, these earlier ones should be the harder ones, so this is okay. Nick Chubb is the next. Which again doesn't get much easier, and Dalvin Cook is after that. Man, and then
I'd take Javonte ahead of Chubb.
I mean, Chubb has not been healthy ever, right?
And he's, they got Kareem Hunt on a multi-year deal too. Like, I don't know. I just think he's going to split more carries. It depends on what's going to happen at the quarterback position, I guess. Are they going to try and lean on that ground game moving forward?
Right.
I don't know.
There's also probably some offensive line regression that needs to get baked into there. They've been unprecedentedly healthy for like 3 years straight now, and now they're paying all that money to guys. I just don't know if I trust that group to stay at this level long term.
Yeah. I think it's Javonte just slightly ahead of Chubb. Honestly, I think Javonte, with the receiving ability and the fact that he doesn't have a Kareem Hunt in the backfield potentially next year, gives him a real edge in PPRs. So
I like it.
Austin Eckler is actually next, not Dalvin Cook. And
wow, it's interesting because I would have those flipped in my head.
Yeah, I would too. In a dynasty, Eckler is 26, Chubb was 25, and Javonte's 21.
I'm still taking Eckler.
Really? Even in a
Javonte.
And of course, there's a split. PPR, it's a real conversation. Non-PPR, it's kind of Javonte the favorite.
Yeah, non-PPR Javonte for sure. But I'm assuming most people watching or listening are in PPR leagues because that's just the most. And Eckler's just a PPR monster.
Yeah, his production rate's so insane.
Here's the other thing that's a really good factor here. In dynasties, I think I agree with you, Kale. Eckler is ahead, and I've always been such a believer. And this plays back to, the windows you have with running backs are so much more limited. It's like a 4-year window of elite production versus a wide receiver who's giving you a 10-year window, or quarterback who's giving you a 15 window. When you have in a PPR league, though, in a dynasty, someone like Eckler, who is going to give you 60 receptions for 500 yards for like 10 seasons, those guys have been proven to be more durable. Think Darren Sproles, think
James White.
James White,
exactly.
Which of course in that offense,
but that's how LA uses Eckler.
Yeah. No, I mean, exactly. Sproles is the greatest example of all. I'm blanking on the white guy from the RMAC, who I've talked
Woodhead.
about. Woodhead, thank you. Woodhead's another. He was always a great like flex or RB2 in a dynasty, and he lasted for like 15 years.
The pride of
that's where Eckler has an edge.
Or maybe Chadron State, maybe.
Chadron State, yes, it is Chadron State. Thank you.
I also just trust Eckler to get more touchdowns than Javonte. He's got 15 already on the season, which is just kind of crazy. And that Chargers offense is going to produce touchdowns a lot, just at a level that until we get the quarterback situation figured out, I just don't trust this Broncos red zone offense as much as I think Javonte is going to get way more yards on the ground moving forward. But again, that's a PPR versus standard conversation right there.
Yeah.
And Herbert might be the best selling point, just because who his quarterback is there, and who the head coach is going to be. That we don't know who's going to be running this system next year.
That's a huge case for Eckler in redrafts as well. Kale, because the
flipped my
touchdowns
opinion.
really keep him afloat in this conversation. If it wasn't for that, it'd be clear cut. And he's that Phil Lindsay type runner where he's under 200 pounds, but coaches trust him because he runs so hard and with like such great leverage. You know, he's like he lives by the mantra of low man wins because that's how he's had to win as a football player. Okay, Dalvin Cook coming up next, but first, shout out to the number one sportsbook in all the land, DraftKings Sportsbook. A gajillion offers going on right now, specifically today. Big old boost on Avs against the Rangers, which is a pesky one. Might be intrigued by the over, might be intrigued by a first period over. Lots of shots on goal props. Will Mac finally get a goal? Will McCarr get yet another assist or point? Lots of ways to go with that. And then, as always, they're running it back. Team run it back with Justin Michael is not. He's happy to have his new coach. He's not team run it back. But DNVR members, our new DNVR members, get that offer that all you fantasy listeners love. Bet on an NFL game, either team score. All you need is a non-0-0 tie, and you will make $100 when you bet $1 or more. And good folks at DraftKings will also match that first deposit bonus of yours when you enter that code DNVR up to $1,000. It's an amazing offer. Only DraftKings Sportsbook, must be 21 or older. Colorado only. Bonus comprised of a first deposit bonus and a first bet match, each up to $500. Deposit bonus requires 25 times playthrough. Restrictions do apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-522-4700. All right, let's keep on this list. Dalvin Cook is next. And again, the quarterback plays into this, but it's similar to Chubb. Like
Dalvin just misses too much time every year.
Yeah, he comes with a handcuff. You're going to have to spend like maybe a 4th to 5th round on Alexander Madison to justify that top 10 pick on Dalvin Cook.
Yeah. The counter is his ceiling's probably top 2 or 3 back.
Yes. So redraft, it's a conversation. It's probably about a toss-up with the fact that, you know, we are this is very hot takey of us to do this take after like a true breakout from Javonte. Yeah. If that continues the next 5 weeks, definitively Javonte. If it's a little more mix and match, it's probably more Dalvin Cook. Dynasty, though, clear-cut Javonte. I think we can all agree there. Yeah. The Alvin Kamara, who is 26, is next. And now you get into a team who's kind of in the murk zone as far as not you're going to get murked, but it's murky zone. As far as the quarterback goes, right? And that could flip
Taysom Hill at quarterback because then
right.
I don't really like Alvin Kamara's stock so much.
Right.
I don't know. I can't justify taking Javonte Williams over Alvin Kamara after years and years of elite production with whoever is playing at quarterback. I just can't.
Fair.
What about in Dynasty?
Oh, it's close. I'm still taking Alvin Kamara. I'm sorry. He's just he's electric. He's one of the few running backs that I would pay big money to, and they did. So
that's a great
healthy,
point. Yeah. And maybe not quite as much, but the same-ish argument of Eckler and longevity as a receiving back in dynasties does apply to Alvin Kamara because he's just not being used as a between the tackles type of back, which is gonna prolong your career. But man, do backs scare me when injuries happen. Expecting that comeback is always very, very scary.
It's a debate with a lot of these guys.
Absolutely. Najee Harris is back. Is next. I think it would have been clearly Najee 5 weeks in. I think it's clearly Javonte now.
I think it depends on what type of league you're in. Najee Harris is a PPR monster. I don't know who that quarterback is moving forward, but
exactly.
And maybe if their quarterback is Jameis or Aaron Rodgers next year, then I will have egg all over my face. But as of right now, the man just catches dump offs like it's his job and takes them for 5 to 6 yards every time.
He runs hard as hell. Like a lot of the things you can love
great.
about Javonte Williams also apply to Najee Harris.
He's
But
phenomenal. Very
I like
similar
Denver's
offensive
offensive line
situations.
better moving forward.
For
Just
sure.
in terms of the age situation, I think.
Well, and they've got Munchak, who appears to not be going anywhere, which you can put some faith in some development and having a floor of a middle of the league offensive line. I mean, that's sort of what happens with Munchak is at worst, you're going to be 15, 16, 17, somewhere in that range. Right. And hopefully better, which Pittsburgh had that luxury for a decade and they no longer do. So
that's right. Another factor in this, almost a 2-year age difference in Javonte's favor, 21 versus 23 here.
Wow, I didn't realize it was that much. That makes me actually probably lean Javonte regardless.
Yep. Next is DeAndre Swift, 22, so another younger cat. I love Swift.
Yeah,
I love Swift too. I'm not going to say a bad word about him.
No, but to me, that situation is. I
think it's the same argument for Denver. Better stability on the line. Although I guess same quarterback concerns and potentially coach concerns. Who knows if Campbell's going to be back or not? But
Javonte's been more. I mean, it's early, but more, durable,
more explosive too.
Yeah, he's not as like PPR dependent either.
Yeah.
Swift is super PPR dependent. That's true.
Yeah.
I'd probably take Swift in a redraft just for next year because I think his production is going to be similar, and I would count on Dan Campbell in that mentality sticking around for at least one more year. But in a dynasty, I'm probably going Javonte if that makes any sense.
Yes, it does.
Nailed it.
Honestly, man, it's kind of sad because this isn't even a question, but Saquon Barkley.
Sad,
Javonte,
but yeah, come on,
all the way.
Yeah. And then the big dogs at the top, who I think you cannot touch. Jonathan Taylor, he is also just 22, and Christian McCaffrey.
McCaffrey's maybe a debate in Dynasty just because of his health issues, but I don't think you can because when he's healthy, he's maybe the best fantasy player in the league.
Kale, I might have expected this from Justin, but you making this face, I'm shocked.
McCaffrey's my guy. I know that, but I've also gotten screwed in 2 leagues the last couple of years because of McCaffrey's injuries.
That's the thing, because he's a number 1 pick.
But 2 years.
Yeah,
it's 2 straight years that he's boned me that way. So I think I'm gonna say Javonte.
Oh my! Oh,
I know. It feels dirty coming out of my mouth.
The world as we know it, my friends.
Blink twice if you're being kidnapped, Kale.
Wow. True. Now I'm afraid to look at my notes. That Kale, I might miss Kale's signals. I really am shook right now. I think Mixon would be the other one to have a conversation. He's 25. And that
he's
offense
taking a
has
lot
been
of hits too.
Another like Javonte probably wins that argument definitively already in a PPR.
Mm-hmm.
And a dynasty, it's a 4-year difference. Redraft, I don't know. Mixon and that offense feel
these
ready-ish.
top 3 or 4 guys in a redraft, I'm still taking over Javonte for sure. But in a dynasty, I mean, Javonte is 21, guys. Like we've got 5 years left of elite production with Javonte.
So it sounds like, Kale, your 3 to 4 guys would be Jonathan Taylor, Najee Harris, Alvin Kamara, DeAndre Swift, and Joe Mixon.
And Joe Mixon. Those are my 5 guys, yeah.
Those would be your... So Javonte QB 6, and he's at least ahead of Mixon in dynasties.
Yeah.
Or RB 6.
Mm-hmm.
QB 6. I wish Javonte was a quarterback. Justin, give us some clarity there. Who's ahead? Who's behind here? Sounds like JT and McCaffrey still ahead for you. Najee as well.
I would take No, I would take Javonte just over Najee.
Okay.
Um,
Swift, Kamara, Cook. Cook you did still have in that realm in a redraft.
Yeah, I would take Kamara and Cook over him, and then I would have him at 6 as well.
In a redraft, Derrick Henry is probably your 5th.
Yeah, in a redraft, definitely.
Okay. Wow, that gets murkier for me because Jonathan Taylor is probably my only for sure. And I have mixed feelings on that because you guys know my feelings on Jonathan Taylor. So
here's my thing with Jonathan Taylor. He's going to be playing for Frank Reich for a long time, and that run game is so fun and creative. They're pulling tackles in a way I've never watched an outside gap zone do before. It's really fun, and I think Jonathan Taylor is going to be playing in that system for a long time.
Quarterback situations relatively stable and stable enough, but not too unstable to where they'll go Bills, Rams, Chiefs, and go off the res on you, and all of a sudden Jonathan Taylor's getting 8 carries. It's what just happened? And the O-line. So that's a definitive. Kamara and PPRs with my whole longevity thing with Eckler is an interesting argument. For me, it's a little more clear Javonte ahead of Swift and Najee, though obviously I have a little more of the season to figure that out. And McCaffrey's a decision I never want to make.
That's why I made that face, Andre. Yeah, it was a hard face. I was in pain.
If someone made me that offer right now, McCaffrey for Javonte or vice versa, I just ghost him. I'm not.
I'm not making that decision.
Yeah.
I need 3 more weeks at least, and I hope they forget to cancel the trade, and maybe I'll act. Quickly, do you guys think that's an okay strategy? Someone left you an annoying fantasy offer that 3 weeks later actually becomes good because the star they wanted got injured once again. Is it allowed for you to accept that if they forget to not retract that offer?
All is fair in love and war, and that's what fantasy football is, right?
I could not agree more.
Piss them off, but you play to win the game. Hello.
I agree. Also, if they were specifically being annoying in making that a disrespectful,
that makes it even
offer.
Better. The petty clapback that they don't ever see coming.
All right, boys. A quick homage to the unheralded fantasy heroes that have carried us to almost the end of the regular season. I am in the playoffs in some leagues already. Who would like to start? I'd be happy to start.
I can start.
Please do, Cal.
I'm locked into the playoffs in my 2 main leagues, and mostly it's because I've had 2 weeks saved by one Pat Freiermuth. Lord Pat, our Friar, has guided me to the light on several occasions.
Amazing. It's incredible. When I say Pat Freiermuth, I kind of think of the Padres logo, like that. That father there. That kind of sounds like Brown what Pat Freiermuth should be. Amazing. In a year where tight ends have truly sucked. That's another thing in this. Javonte is low key. If I reached on a running back, I ended up well. If I reached on any other position, it sucked. My top wide receivers just got injured.
Even this is the one year, after years of us saying, it's okay to use a first-round pick on Travis Kelce. It's okay to use a first-round pick on Travis Kelce. We, preached that at the beginning of the year. It's the one year it was not okay to use a first-round pick on Travis Kelce.
Yeah. Truly,
Waller's
truly
production
amazing.
dipped significantly, too.
Yep, exactly. And Kittle keeps on being injured at least half the year. So, yeah, Pat Freiermuth, on the other hand, is going to be a top 10 tight end by the end of this year, with literally an elderly citizen throwing him. Justin, your unheralded hero.
Mine's Cordaro Patterson, who's he's gotten a lot of love this year because he's obviously broken out in a major way. But I picked him up on waivers going into week 2 or something, and now he's my running back 1 with Henry going down. So I'm in a must-win situation. We're both 7-6, trying to secure the last spot in the playoffs this week. I need Patterson to go off. I'm hoping that by giving him some love, the football gods are going to do right by me and have him, get a 30-point week. But he's been great all year. So regardless, I appreciate his services.
I have as unheralded a fantasy hero as you'll ever hear. This man is single-handedly turning me around on IDPs, individual defensive players, because in a dynasty where I've had so many injuries, and Lamar Jackson and Javonte Williams have carried me with Cooper Kupp, I must mention. But, through all the troubles with an IR that is Raheem Mostert and Chase Edmonds and, just left and right, it's been a disaster. The great Kenny Moore, a pretty normal starting cornerback in the NFL, has somehow been that miraculous IDP star because he gets picked on so much. So he always gives you tackles, and then you'll have those games where he gives you an interception, he gets a sack, he gets a fumble recovery. He's that feisty corner. He's not a shutdown corner. You don't want a shutdown corner in fantasy. Jalen Ramsey sucks. Champ Bailey would have never been starterable or rosterable in an IDP format. But the legend Kenny Moore, 21 points this week. He's also had another 21-point week, a 23-point week, 18 and 17-point weeks. He is a legend. Thank you, Fantasy King.
In my IDP league, my unsung hero was Patrick Queen this year. Picked him up off of waivers because not that good of an actual inside linebacker, but guess what he does do? He racks up tackles.
That's right. That's right. Not many plays around the line of scrimmage, but he's there to clean up the trash after he just lets you get gashed for another 8 yards. So
yes, he
that's
is.
the fantasy heroes you need in IDP. That's why I hate IDP. But you know what? Sometimes it's great.
Josh Watson would have 8 as a college IDP. 14 garbage tackles a game, 6 yards past the line of scrimmage.
Damn straight. Kale, do you have a top streaming option at defense here?
Yeah, it's actually Tennessee, which has been a mess. They're playing the Jacksonville Jaguars this weekend, and that has been fantasy gold all year for Speaking of saving your season, I've had a couple. I got 20+ performances out of the Eagles defense twice this year, starting them out of nowhere off of the waivers. So these little streaming options sometimes work out for you. I got 11 points out of Miami's defense last weekend out of nowhere. So these streamers help. Titans are my number one option. And then
I the Dolphins last week as well.
I really like the Bears this week as well. They're playing the Packers, but they are in Green Bay, and the Packers offense has been struggling a little bit. I like that Bears defense. Again, you're at this point, if you're streaming something, you're hoping for a lot of turnovers, and that Bears defense has a knack for turning the ball over in some really weird situations. I'm not counting on picks or anything out of Aaron Rodgers, but fumble recoveries, that type of thing. At this point, you're hoping for big plays since most of the good defenses are already taken up, and I like them to cause some turnovers this week.
Beautiful.
I like Denver against Detroit at home too, just because you got the possibility of Goff throwing picks.
If they're out there, I'd be surprised if Denver's defense is on the waivers, but if they are, that's a great pick.
Yeah. And you can't go wrong with the Chargers again if they're out there. Giants starting Jake Fromm, and Seahawks if you need to, who are facing the Houston Texans, most likely Davis Mills. So you can't go wrong.
Although that is a defense without Jamal Adams, who was their best defensive player. So start at your own risk there.
Before we go, Tennessee or Denver, if you had to pick one of those two, because I have the option to play either of those.
Tennessee.
All right, with that, coming off a bye. Yeah. Let's go Tennessee. All right, fellas. Thank you. That was DNVR Fantasy. Best of luck to you all. Update, even if you're out of it, update your rosters. This might be last week of the regular season, important for a lot of teams getting in or out. Respect your league. Still set your lineup. Still stream some options if you need to. Final week to get it done, and then you're good. We will be back, though, next week. Thank you all. Thank you, Kale. Thank you, Jam.